Welcome to the Calvary Church Podcast, where we strive to lead people into an overflowing life with Jesus. Join us as we explore inspiring messages, engaging stories, and thought-provoking conversations that uplift your spirit and deepen your faith. Whether you're at home, on the go, or anywhere in between, we're glad you're here. Let's dive in.
Today, as we talk about the Unoffendables, this was, as we planned out this whole series, this was my favorite title of the series, and I'm just being honest with you. It's my favorite title, so for whatever it's worth, that's it. The title of today's message is Everyone's an Idiot But Me. Everyone's an idiot but me. I'm not going to ask you to turn to your neighbor and say, you're an idiot, but I'm not. We're not going to do that. We're not trying to stir up offenses. But this is the bent that oftentimes in our worst moments, our lowest moments, our frustrating moments that we take, right? I don't know if you've ever paid attention to kind of your inner monologue in a given week, kind of that running commentary, not the things you say to others, but the comments you kind of make to yourself about others. The frustrations, the irritations, the things that ultimately get under your skin. This isn't something we normally reflect much on, but speaking from personal experience, it is remarkable what you learn about your life when you objectively listen to that inner dialogue, to what you're saying and how you're saying it. And one of the things I've discovered about my own running commentary is that it's remarkable that my inner monologue almost always paints myself as the only smart one, right one, or victim in a given situation. I don't know if you've ever noticed that yourself, if you've reflected, that in those pictures, in the commentary and the dialogue that we have, we're the right ones and they're the wrong ones. That person cut you off, that jerk, what are they doing? Why would they do that if they knew any better? When in reality, and I'll speak for myself, I'm frustrated because they cut me off and I'm in a hurry because I'm running late and that's my fault. Or that employee that can't help me find that one thing that seems incompetent. Maybe you've been there when in reality, if I didn't wait until the last minute to walk into the store and look for that one thing that employee can't help me find, if I hadn't waited till the last minute, that wouldn't have been a problem. But I'm irritated because of that. Or maybe, that person working in the drive-through line that we're frustrated is so thick-headed because you asked for no pickles and they put pickles on your burger. And you're like, what is wrong with them? Why can't they hire more competent people, smart people at this fast food restaurant? And we get irritated because in our inner dialogue, it's human nature. We paint others as the ones who are wrong and we are right. We're the right ones. We're on the right side of things. What I'm getting at is that even in our most humble moments, we love to position ourselves as superior to those around us or as victims to what incompetent idiots are doing to us. Sorry for the strong words. I don't know if others are like this around the world, but I can confidently say, at least here in America, we are pretty remarkable at this. In fact, if this were an Olympic sport, we would be a gold medalist country every year. We're amazing at this. We're some of the best in the world at painting ourselves in the right picture and others in the wrong picture. Now, I'll be honest. If I love going to coffee shops to work, I hate coffee. I just like the environment. I drink tea. But I love going to coffee shops at work, and it's a place of just incredible, healthy conversations, connections that we get to have. And I want to challenge you to try this little experiment sometime that I've tried at coffee shops. Just quietly listen to what others are talking about at a coffee shop or a local restaurant. Not to learn all their business, but I've discovered that 9 out of 10 times, most people are spending a lot of time talking about how they've been wronged by others or how others are irritating them. It's very rare that I ever hear anyone say, I did something wrong. I was wrong. It's so rare to even hear that anymore. Even celebrities who have done wrong things, they issue these apologies. And most of those apologies, if you read them or listen to them, most of the time, they kind of give an apology that's not really an apology. Like, I'm sorry I was so caring and I tried so hard to help. And I guess I made a mistake because I loved people too much. It's like that apology that's not really an apology. You're saying I'm sorry, but you're actually saying I was right in a subtle way. That's what we've gotten really good at, spinning things so it still paints us in a good light. And that's not just for celebrities, that's us too. In marriages and in our relationships and our work, we love to do that. We're really, really good at this. You see, we are amazing at positioning ourselves as the right ones and others as the wrong ones. And I don't think it's just an American thing. I think it's actually a human thing. In fact, just listen to what the Apostle Paul wrote in his letter to the Corinthian church 2,000 years ago. Here's what he wrote in this letter. 1 Corinthians chapter 4 and verse 3. He said, I care very little if I am judged by you or by any human court. That's a pretty bold statement, right? I don't care to be judged by others. Maybe you've been there, you've said that. I don't care to be judged by others. Usually the underlying statement of that means, I don't care to be judged by others because I judge myself. I hold myself to a high standard. But listen to what he goes on to say. Verse 4. Or then at verse 3, he says, indeed, I do not even judge myself. I don't even judge myself. My conscience is clear, but that does not make me innocent. Wow. This is the Apostle Paul, okay? Apostle Paul wrote a good majority of the New Testament, planted churches all over the known world, the Roman Empire at that time. This is one of those giants of the faith. And he's saying, no one else judges me, but I don't even judge myself. Why? He's going to get to that. He said, my conscience is clear, but that does not make me innocent. It is the Lord who judges me. The Lord judges me. Therefore, judge nothing before the appointed time. Wait until the Lord comes. He will bring to light what is hidden in darkness and will expose the motives of the heart. At that time, each will receive their praise from God. What's he saying? He's saying there's an inability for us as human beings oftentimes to objectively evaluate our motives and our heart. That's why we leave it up to God. That oftentimes, more often than not, we are in the wrong in something, but we can't admit it or even see it, so we point the finger at others. He's saying that he didn't even trust his own judgment about himself. He's saying, leave that stuff up to God. In other words, don't take the seat as the innocent judge and jury, but recognize that we are all guilty of something too. See, we get so offended about things oftentimes because we are convinced that we're right and they're wrong. We draw a line, we're on the right side, they're on the wrong side. But what we often forget is this important fact about what Jesus has done on the cross. It's that Jesus didn't just die for others. He died for my sin, my wrong. That we are all sinners saved by grace. With the wrong that others have done or will do to me, we are just as guilty. We're just as guilty. Maybe we aren't guilty of that specific thing, but we're just as guilty. We stand guilty as charged. We are no better than they are. And yet, we are often very quick to accuse, point fingers, and think everyone's an idiot but me. I'm the only one that's got this figured out. In this company where I work, everyone else is an idiot but me. If they would just listen to me. In this family, if everyone would just start listening to me, things would be much better. Here's the reality. If you were actually put in any of those positions or seats, you would make mistakes too because you're human. None of us are perfect. This response and approach to the wrong that happens to us is so natural, it's almost like eating or breathing. Like we don't even have to try at it. It just comes natural. And that doesn't make it right, but it's natural. We lie to ourselves all the time and portray ourselves as the ones in the right and others in the wrong. So we get offended that others don't see that we're actually right. Now, I understand this is not comfortable things. You didn't come to church to be uncomfortable today. We're going to be a little uncomfortable. If you can stick with me through the uncomfortable, we'll get to a place where it makes a little bit more sense. But this is what our challenge is. This is what our wrestling oftentimes is. And I know, in 1 Corinthians, Paul reminds us that maybe our judgment maybe our judgment is a little skewed. Maybe we're actually not getting the most accurate picture of our position in this scenario. Maybe we're painting ourselves in a good light because it makes us feel better, more at peace. I know what some may say about this, but shouldn't we be at least angry about sin? Like, isn't that something that's good to be angry about? Of course, we should be angry at sin, but the follow-up question to that is worth exploring is that we are usually angry about something more specific with sin, more namely, other people's sin. We get frustrated about someone else's sin and what they have done. But we've forgotten to look at ourselves. See, when we think that, everyone else's sin, everyone else's mistakes, that's what's wrong with the world, or that's what offends me, we forget about these important verses in Isaiah 53, verse 4. The prophet Isaiah wrote these words hundreds of years before Jesus was even born. It says, surely he, speaking of the Messiah, which would be Jesus, surely he took up our pain and bore our suffering, yet we considered him punished by God, stricken by him, and afflicted. In other words, Jesus took on this punishment that maybe would be deserved by a criminal, by someone who had done wrong, and yet he hadn't. Very next verse, verse 5. But I want you to pay attention to this, but he was pierced for, what does it say? Our transgressions. He was crushed for our iniquities. We don't use the word iniquity. It's our sin, our wrong. He's crushed for our wrong. And he goes on, the punishment that brought us peace was on him, and by his wounds we are healed. Notice Isaiah includes us and we, not just you. Because that included Isaiah, that included the Apostle Paul, that includes you and me. That what Jesus did on the cross, as he hung there on the cross, as he walked out of the grave, overcoming sin, death, and the grave, he didn't just overcome those people's sin, he overcame our sin. When we have a more accurate picture of our own need for a Savior, it changes how we view the sin of others. We aren't in the seat as an innocent accuser. We are the guilty ones as well. In Luke's Gospel, chapter 15, Jesus tells this really interesting story. We refer to it as the story of the parable, or the prodigal son, okay? And the prodigal son, if you're not familiar, this story that Jesus shares, the parable, so it's not an actual story, but has a lot of truth and reality in it. This son asked his father for his own inheritance early. Usually you get that after your father dies. So the younger son gets his inheritance early, and he leaves. And he goes and blows it all, spends it all. And he finds himself at the lowest moment eating pig slop. Now, to us, that's really gross, maybe. I hope it's gross to you, but, maybe not. I mean, I grew up in dairy, so, farming things are acceptable, I guess. But that's kind of gross. But you have to understand culturally how low of a moment this was. This young man was Jewish, okay? Jewish customs, pig's meat, or pigs in general, are considered unclean. Not just unclean like they're dirty, unclean spiritually, unclean religiously. They didn't eat any meat that came from pigs. And now this man is eating the food that an unclean animal eats. This is the lowest of the low. And he comes to this realization: at my father's home, even as a servant, I would be doing better than this. So he makes the decision to leave that job, quote unquote, and return to his home and beg his father for the opportunity to at least be a servant in his home. And as he's, the story, if you haven't, he's coming down the road that he was very familiar with. This is where he grew up. And his father sees him off in the distance. And his father is waiting, and he runs to see his son, and he embraces him. And he throws this massive party because his son is back home. And he says, what was dead is now alive again. And they throw this party, and it's this remarkable moment. That young man, do you think he will ever take for granted what he now has? He's welcomed back into the home of his father, to his household, to his family. He's accepted as a son, not just as a servant. Do you think he will ever take for granted what he had lost and now gained back? No, because he understood his position, that he didn't deserve that. He didn't earn that. And honestly, he should have gotten something worse than that. And when he came with that kind of an approach and a position, a posture, things land differently inside of us. And one of the challenges of offense, when we see everyone else as an idiot but us, is we forget where we've come from. We forget what we've come from. We forget that God has so willingly given us forgiveness and has so willingly, graciously poured out his love to us. Not because we were someone special, not because we were just born into the right family, not just because we have the right name or we have the right economic status, or right, not because of any of that, but simply because God loves us. And we forget that journey. We forget that we were the prodigal. We were the one that God ran to and embraced us and without question loved us and changed us and transformed us. Oftentimes, the longer we're serving Jesus, we get more polished and we become more respectable. And as we become more polished and more respectable, we forget that we're sinners saved by grace. We forget that we were the beggar on the street that God has so graciously picked up, loved, and poured out his heart, his life into, and changed us and transformed us. And when we forget that, we forget how he's called us to relate to others. That there are others who haven't gone that journey yet, haven't experienced that transformation. They're still sitting in the pig slop, and they don't even realize it sometimes. And you getting offended at their pig slop isn't changing anything. God's called us to walk in forgiveness and to recognize that we have wrong in our lives too. That we are sinners saved by grace too. We aren't in the seat as an innocent accuser. We are just as guilty. And think about this. The wrath of God was poured out to Jesus that day upon the cross. It wasn't simply because of what others had done, but Jesus took the weight of my sin upon his shoulders because of the things that I have done, because of the wrong that I've committed. And because of what Jesus overcame that day, he breathed his last, and 3 days later, when he walked out of the grave, our sin and the sin of others has already been dealt with, and I don't think we need to climb back up on that cross ourselves. The work has been accomplished once and for all. Jesus isn't going back on the cross. He overcame sin, death, and the grave. And think about this. What an incredible relief this is, after all, that I don't have to deal with other people's sin. It's not my responsibility. And to be honest, life is lighter when we can recognize this truth. That people might offend us or try to do things that offend us, oftentimes unintentionally. It's not our responsibility to carry the weight of the outcomes or the consequence. We don't have to carry the weight of others' wrongs. Jesus carried those upon his shoulders already. And that's not to mention the anger that we stir up over offenses and wrongs done by others that causes us to just be straight up foolish. Have you ever done something foolish when you're angry? You lose your mind and you do something really dumb? You say something dumb? Anger causes us to be foolish. In fact, we have this really strong challenge about anger. In the book of Ecclesiastes, chapter 7, verse 9, it says this, "For anger resides in the lap of fools." Anger resides in the lap of fools. Those moments that you're offended and you get this, we put the word righteous in front of it to make it more holy, but we get righteous anger about what's been done, and we're like, I'm going to right this wrong. But anger resides in the lap of fools. The moment you identify, oh man, there's anger, foolish things are about to happen. We could go through history. You can scroll through social media and see all of the reels of the foolish things people have done because of anger. In other words, while anger might be present in the world, it usually finds its way into the lap of foolish people. It's one thing to be angry or offended, but none of us want to be foolish. And thinking we are entitled to our anger regardless of what has caused us to feel that way is nothing more than that. It's foolishness. And foolishness, in the end, will ultimately destroy us. It will destroy who we want to become and who we hope to be. See, we read a lot about fools in Scripture. In Proverbs 15:21 in the New Living Translation, it says, "Foolishness brings joy to those with no sense. A sensible person stays on the right path." In Proverbs 18:6 in the New Living Translation, it says, "Fools' words get them into constant quarrels. They are asking for a beating." Proverbs 12:16 says, "Fools show their annoyance at once, but the prudent overlook an insult." It's hard to overlook insults, isn't it? But the fool has no bearing. They just let loose. Proverbs 18:2, "Fools find no pleasure in understanding, but delight in airing their own opinions." This is the purpose statement of social media. We air our opinions. Airing your opinions doesn't make it right, okay? Proverbs 28:26, "Those who trust in themselves are fools, but those who walk in wisdom are kept safe." Proverbs 10:23, New Living Translation, "Doing wrong is fun for a fool, but living wisely brings pleasure to the sensible." We oftentimes are so tempted to walk in the way of a fool. And the struggle we often face is this predisposition that we have of being offended. Almost like we're looking for it. We're just looking for the next offense. Who's going to offend me? This is what our culture's become. But if we're willing to take a posture that is determined not to let offenses stick to us, to not allow offenses to produce anger within us, everything changes. It's like we're looking for that next person to offend us just so we can be irritated. But maybe we have this like harboring anger within us that we need to allow the work of Jesus to heal, to transform, rather than constantly looking for the next offense so that that anger can get out. So we can get this like release of anger. It's not healthy. In 1997, Max Lucado published a kid's book called "You Are Special." If you have not read this book, if you have kids, it is a phenomenal, phenomenal book. And while it's a kid's book, a lot of adults, I think, would benefit from reading it. In the book, he shares about how every day these small wooden people called wemmicks do the same thing. They stick either gold stars or gray dots on one another. And so these wemmicks have gold stars, gray dots. The pretty ones, those with smooth wood and fine paint, always get the gold stars. The talented ones always get the gold stars. Others, though, who can do little or have chipped paint, they get the ugly gray dots, like the main character, Punchinello. And in this story, the wood carver, Eli, helps Punchinello understand how special he really is. And that no matter what other wemmicks may think, his value wasn't defined by what others thought or said about him. And it's an important message in that story that we miss. We're looking for offense because we're looking for others to affirm our value. I'll say that again. We're looking for offense because we're looking for others to fulfill or to identify our value. If you're looking for others to identify your value all the time, you're going to find a lot of offenses. If you're waiting for people to put gold stars on you instead of gray dots, you're going to be really disappointed and you're going to get angry. You're going to get frustrated because you have an expectation that others can't fulfill. No human being can communicate the value that you truly have. Only the one that created you. That's the story that Max Lucado wrote. Eli was the wood carver. He's the one who made the wemmicks. And he saw the value in each and every one of them because he made them. The smooth ones and the rough ones. He made them the way he did for a reason. And the same is true for us. That God made us the way he did for a reason. And we're always looking for offenses because we're looking to be affirmed. whether it's on social media, at work, or in our family. We desperately want people to see the value and the worth that we possess. But we're never going to find that from other people. We're only going to truly find that from a Creator. And when we have this posture and bent to look for an offense, we're going to find it. And we're going to find it, and we're going to overreact oftentimes. Having a predisposition toward an offense is our way of looking for that worth in what others are saying. It's this weird two-sided approach we humans take to the rest of the world. We are both the ones that are always right and the ones that are constantly need others to affirm that we're right. In Galatians chapter 1, the Apostle Paul said this, "Am I now trying to win the approval of human beings or of God? Or am I trying to please people? If I were still trying to please people, I would not be a servant of Christ." If I were still trying to please people, I would not be a servant of Christ. That's a powerful statement for Paul to write. When was the last time you listened to yourself and how you positioned yourself in relation to others? Wherever it might be. Maybe you're like I have been and realize everyone else is wrong and you are somehow always right. The truth is, we're all sinners. In Romans chapter 3, verse 23, it says that for all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God and are all justified freely by his grace through the redemption that came by Christ Jesus. Here's the challenge I have for you today as the worship team comes. At our best, so this is kind of think of this, at our best, we should look toward others. When you are at your best, you should look to help others, to serve others, to care for others, at your best. When you are at your worst, we should look to ourselves. When we're at our best, we look to serve others, to help others, to care for others. When we're at our worst, we oftentimes look to others to blame. But when we're at our worst, when we recognize I'm not at my peak, I'm not where I should be right now, we should look to ourselves and identify what needs to change in me. How do I need to be transformed into the likeness of Christ? At our best, oftentimes our world, at our best, we look to ourselves. Look at what I have done and what I've accomplished and how awesome I am. And at our worst, we look to others. Look at what they have done to me and why they have caused this, and I'm a victim. But the way of Jesus is so backwards, isn't it? The way of Jesus is at our best. Whether you have resources, time, wisdom, at our best, we look to others. How can we help others? And at our worst, we reflect back on ourselves. What do I need to change? How can I be better? And if we're going to walk without offense, if we're going to become the unoffendables, if we're truly going to be able to answer that question, is it possible to be unoffendable? If we're going to actually live that out, it's not possible if we can't own our own state. We can't own our own condition. We can't recognize that we're sinners too. That we've made mistakes. We're the prodigals. Look how far God has brought us. And if God has brought us this far, maybe he can do that for someone else. Maybe they're not there yet. I don't need to take offense and get angry at someone that hasn't gotten there yet. And if we've all sinned, we aren't sitting in the seat to judge or carry offenses. Everyone's not an idiot but me. You see, we can be idiots sometimes too. The difference comes when we are more aware of our own fallenness. When we recognize our sin, our mistakes, our shortcomings, we are less likely to hold others against them. Does that mean we ignore wrongs done against us or mistakes that are made? Not at all. But we don't allow the gray stickers to stick. Because our worth, our value, our affirmation doesn't come from others. It ultimately comes from the God who created us. And in a minute, we're going to sing a song together. Before we sing that song, I want to pray that this prayer that Eli spoke to little Punchinello in the book, "You're Special." It's that the gray stickers wouldn't stick any longer. And you know what? If you read the story, not to be a spoiler, sorry, Punchinello goes and people try to stick the gray stickers on him and they don't stick any longer. Why? Because the power they had over him was released because Punchinello recognized the value and worth that he possessed from his creator. My prayer for you today isn't that you'd have an amazing self-esteem and you just think so highly of yourself. My prayer for you today is that at your best, you look to others, and at your worst, you look to yourself. That you recognize we are broken people. And in those moments are the moments that we are most likely to find offense because it gets our eyes off of the pain and the shortcomings of our own selves. But those are the moments that we can make the greatest progress. We can become more who Jesus wants us to be.
Thank you for joining us today on the Calvary Church Podcast. We hope you found encouragement and inspiration in today's message. Remember, you are not alone on your faith journey. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with your friends and family. And don't forget to subscribe to our podcast so you never miss an episode. For more information about our church, upcoming events, and ways to get involved, visit our website at calvaryirwin.com or follow us on social media at Calvary Irwin. Until next time, may God bless you and keep you. Have a wonderful week.